So Squid Game was the biggest and most unique deck game show to ever exist, with fun and gruesome deaths appearing every episode. However, after the end of the original show, we were all left heartbroken and wanting more. Which is why, luckily for us, we had the reality show spin-off known as Squid Game The Challenge. A show that, like its original, was filled with insane drama and games. And of course, in honor of its new season that is about to drop in the coming days, I'm here to explain every death and game ever seen up to this very moment. So of course, with all that said and without wasting too much of your time, let's begin with the first elimination and game ever seen in that first season. Which of course was none other than player 318 Starla Hines, a woman who alongside players 052, 388, 105 and 450 were all eliminated during the red light green light game. Following this and during the next round of the same game, we also saw players 167, 146, 058 and 242 all get shot and eliminated in the same exact way. Now this then continues with players 172, 028, 346, 205 and what appears to be 072. However, that number in particular is a little harder to make out. Following this, we then see 157, 384 and 236 get eliminated shortly after. We then get the next round of the red light green light game where we see a couple of more players get eliminated from the game after failing to stay still. However, a few of these numbers are actually impossible to make out in this moment, so let's just mention them here and move on to players 104, 206, 071, 197, 185, 169, 385, 347, and 189. Before then again seeing another player get eliminated on the ground in a way that makes it almost impossible for us to see what her number actually is. Now she is then followed shortly after this by players 199 and 047. Before we then get a hell of a lot more players getting shot and eliminated in this very moment right here. We then got the final sprint to the finish with just a few seconds left on the clock, where after failing to make it in time, players 412, 392, 406, 060 and 066 all got eliminated from the games. Now with that, we'd of course reached the end of the red light green light game. However, as you all already know, it was only the beginning of what would become a bloodbath of eliminated players. As following this, we actually got a couple more dropouts from players who didn't want to continue in this intimidating and scary hellhole. They were of course players 173, 295 and 059. Not much was actually ever seen of them up to this point, however I am sure they were quite the competitors in their own ways. But now moving on, we then see that the new total of remaining players is just 197, meaning that a total of 259 players were actually eliminated during that last game, which is actually insane to even think about. However, now moving on into the games, next we see that player 200 actually got voted out and eliminated by players 134 and 101. They did this purely because he was the loudest and most outspoken at that moment in time. But now just to keep us moving on, next we get the cookie game, where we of course get a hell of a lot more eliminated players for us to talk about. With the first set of 4 players being unable to decide on their shapes, they of course all ended up getting eliminated from the game as a result of no time remaining on the timer. These players were of course 170, 166, 098 and 328. However, these 4 players wouldn't actually be alone in this, as when the next set of 4 players had to go in and pick their shapes, they too couldn't decide on what shape to go. Which of course now meant that the 4 players 378, 288, 454 and 321 were also going to be eliminated from the game. Now eventually, after a decision was finally made and the game finally taking place, we'd of course get the eliminations that we'd all been waiting to see, with the eliminations for the circle group going first. Here we see players 48, 428 and 073 get eliminated from that round. We then go into the triangle version of the same game where players 456, 020, 444, 099, 271 and 165 were all eliminated after failing to remove the cookie. Following this, we then go on to the star version of the same game where of course players 79, 39, 134 and 245 would of course be eliminated after failing to complete the challenge. However, they'd soon be joined by multiple other players in the same round who ran out of time to complete the cookie cut. Now we then move over to the final version of this same game, which of course is none other than the dreaded umbrella. Here we'd see, after trying desperately to make that cut, that sadly players 101, 193, 349, 335, 006, 137, 114, 299, 004, 368, 223, 116 and 055 were all eliminated from the game, with players 443, 371, 192, 191, 439, 314, 397, 132, 341, 307, 289, and 003 following shortly after due to not having enough time remaining to make the cut. Now following this, we then get a couple of more self-eliminations from players 317 and 277. The exact reasons why they left is still unclear, however reports do claim that it was personal reasons and by self-elimination. We then move on to the telephone test, where player 198 had to convince someone to pick up the phone. However, after he failed miserably to do this, he ended up getting eliminated himself. In honestly what can only be called the saddest and most pathetic elimination so far. But now, moving on, in the next game we get Warship, where everyone was split into 8 teams of 15, with each team then having to face off against each other in a game of battleships. In this game, if your ship is sunk, you and whoever else is in it with you would be eliminated, with your captain and lieutenant also being eliminated if your team lost the game. So with that said, in the first round of the game, we of course saw as Team 1's first ship was completely destroyed, with players 068, 041, 422, 447, and 452 being eliminated in the process. Following this, Team 1 then sunk the ship of the opposing team, meaning that players 142, 188, 389, and 343 were also eliminated from the game. However, following this, Team 1 would then have yet another of their ships completely destroyed, with both players 270 and 432 being the ones on board at that very moment, meaning that they were also eliminated from the game as well. However, with that, they would also be joined by the captain number 220 and the lieutenant number 352. But let's just keep things quickly moving on. In the next round of the same game, we of course saw that the blue team has sunk one of the red team's ships almost immediately, meaning that of course all players on board would be eliminated from the game. These players of course being 186, 187, and 433. Following this, they then destroy yet another ship in that same game, meaning that players 136, 135, and 386 would be eliminated as a result. And of course now, with the red team being decided as the losers, that would of course mean that the captain number 396 and the lieutenant number 264 would also be eliminated from the game. We then move over to the next round of the same game, where we see the blue team sink one of the red team ships, with players 350, 034, 438, 435, and 267 being the ones on board during that elimination. Following this, they then do the same once again and eliminate players 226, 362, and 357. As well as, once again, the captain and lieutenant of that team. But now in the final round of this game, we'd of course see the red team sink the battleship of the blue team, with players 218 and 414 being eliminated as a result. Following this, and to avenge their fallen teammates, the blue team then sinks a ship of their own, with players 103, 248, 297, 035, and 033 being eliminated as a result. We then see the blue team eliminate the final boat to win the game, eliminated players 107, 194, and 367. As well as of course the captain and lieutenant of that team, players 258 and 273. And following this, is then revealed that 43 players had lost the previous game and had been eliminated from the competition as a result, meaning that right now just 73 players remain, going into the next Storm vote. A vote that after a lot of drama and struggling finally gave us a result that meant players 374, 330, and 161 would be eliminated from the future of the game. However, in the next Storm test that followed a little later in the next episode, we'd see that after player 183 was given the power to eliminate 2 players from the game, he'd of course choose to eliminate 026 and 141. One because he had never spoken to her, and the other because he just couldn't trust him at all. Following this, player 375 would open his own box and get eliminated as a result. We then see player 87 open his box and gain the power to eliminate yet another player from the game. A power he of course used to eliminate player 176, because he was currently in a 4-player alliance with some of the other players. We then see after a good bit of struggling that 229 also gained the power to eliminate 3 more players from the game. A power she of course used to eliminate players 130, 243, and 232, seeing that these 3 players were the current biggest threats for her in this game. Now following this, the remaining 63 players would then advance to the next game, which of course was none other than the notorious game of marbles, where you must face against your greatest ally to claim all the marbles and win, while also eliminating them from the game. Here we'd see player 451 beat and eliminate player 337, as well as player 031 eliminate player 339. Player 149 then eliminates 404, while player 18 eliminates 361. Player 077 then eliminates player 083, while 393 eliminates 382. Player 204 then eliminates 209, while player 287 eliminates 097. Number 286 eliminates 334, while 182 eliminates 183. 016 then eliminates 344, while 221 eliminates the annoying as fuck 179. Following this, and after failing to decide in the game, both players 065 and 399 get themselves eliminated from the games with no time remaining on the clock. We then see my personal favourite duo fall apart when player 254 eliminates player 087, a loss that I can't lie still hurts to this day. We then see player 278 eliminate player 229, while 002 eliminates 319. Player 19 then eliminates 336, before finally ending us off with the mother and son duo, where after a lot of emotions and struggling, we'd see that the son, player 301, had won the game and eliminated his mother, player 302, as a result. Following this, the remaining 31 players then put through another dorm test, where each player chosen then gets the power to save another. However, for anyone not chosen by the end of this vote, they would of course be eliminated, which is exactly what happened to players 120, 149, 002, 158, 178, 222, 204, 090, 323, 215, and 030. Following this, we then move over to the next game, which is of course the glass bridge. Here, after a lot of talk and a bit of bullshit, the ever-reliable leader, player 182, chooses wrong and falls to his death. Following this, the same thing then happens to player 221 and 077. Before then, after everyone else refuses to go, number 301 gives in to peer pressure and makes a second guess and dies as a result of guessing wrong. Following this, and after a couple more jumps have been made, player 393 makes her guess and sadly fails. Player 23 then a little later gets her turn and does the exact same thing. We then sadly get my guy, and the guy that I had winning the entire thing, Mike, or player 254, sadly guess wrong and fall to his death. Following this, player 269 makes the final guess and becomes the final player to die in the glass bridge game. Which now means that only 12 players currently remain going forward into the next game of death, which is of course the dorm test that is decided by a roll of a dice. Here, if the dice roll is 6, then one player must be eliminated from the game. Whether that be yourself or another player is entirely up to yourself throwing the dice. However, it is a decision that must be made before the dice is thrown. Now, as a result of risking her own life, player 018 is of course eliminated from the game after she of course lands a 6. Following this, player 31 does the same thing and nominates himself as tribute, and of course lands a 6 and gets eliminated as a result. We then get yet another sad elimination for me personally when player 286 does the exact same thing and of course lands the 6 and gets eliminated. Now this of course leaves us with just 9 remaining players going into the Circle of Trust game, where someone is chosen to be up for elimination every round. However, if they can find who picked them to be eliminated, they can of course survive, whilst also eliminating that other person from the game. Now the first to fail this and get eliminated from the game itself was player 418, when he of course failed to find 287, who was the player who picked him to be eliminated. Following this, number 19 would fail to find 355, which of course meant that they were also eliminated from the game. However, soon after this, player 429 would then on his turn be found by player 287, getting eliminated as a result. Player 451 then also picks right and eliminates player 051 from the game. Following this, player 451 then once again guesses correctly and gets player 278 out of the game completely. We then end off this round with player 355 guessing wrong and eliminating herself as a result, bringing us to the final 3 players in the entire game. Now we then get a decision dorm test where someone must push one of the buttons in the middle of the room. If it lights up green, you can move on to the next game. If it's red, you are eliminated. And if it's grey, well, nothing happens and you are essentially safe from elimination. Here we see player 287 pick the grey button, which essentially means that she is now safe. Following this, and the next player to pick is 016, who of course picks his own button and sadly hits the red one, which of course, as a result, now eliminates him from the current game. Now this of course also means that both players 287 and 451 are now our 2 finalists, moving into the final game. In the final game of the first season, we see that both players must play a game of rock, paper, scissors to decide who gets to go and grab a key for the box beside them. They must find the right key and open the box to the money. Whoever does this will be declared the winner of the game and win that prize pool of 4,560,000. Now after a lot of time is spent looking and failing to find the right key, in the end May or player 287 would be the one to find it and win the game. Of course also meaning that player 451 is our final loser and elimination from Squid Game The Challenge Season 1. Now of course that also brings us to the end of this video explaining every death and elimination scene so far in Squid Game The Challenge. However, as you're all likely aware, Season 2, as of this recording, drops later today, meaning that we'll of course have the explanation for that video out very soon. So if you'd like to see that, then like this video down below and subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss it when it finally drops. But for now, and with all of that said, that's going to do it for me and this one. I hope you all have a great day or night wherever you are, and peace.